Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. Let's face it, parenting is tough, and the job is even tougher if you have very strong-minded children. Joining us with advice on how to stop the battle of the wills, we welcome the author of Gentle Parenting Reimagined, How to Make It Work with Oppositional and Defiant Kids, Dr. Paul Sunseri. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you talk a little bit about the concept of gentle parenting? I think a lot of us think it sounds like a great idea, but maybe we're not executing it perfectly.
Well, the idea's been around for about 10 years or so, and basically it emphasizes parents having the best relationship with their kids that they possibly can. And I don't think anybody really argues that that's a bad thing, but one of the problems with gentle parenting is unlike previous generations, it doesn't really focus a lot on disciplining kids when they behave in some way that their parents don't care for. And it's actually been criticized to some degree because some people think it's just a way for parents to let their kids get away with murder. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is I'm a child and family psychologist, and I've spent my entire career working with very, very challenging kids. And the idea behind the book is how to help parents who want to be gentle, but at the same time have kids that are very strong-willed and oppositional.
Yeah, there's a way to find that balance in there somewhere. So I've got a question for you in terms of when kids have those really big emotional upsetting times, how to know when to kind of lean into that and when to maybe take a step back and disengage with them.
Sure, it's a great question. So I recommend that parents lean in when their kids or say they're having a temper tantrum. And with teenagers, we call it dysregulation, but it's basically the same idea. So lean in when a kid is hurting and they're upset about something. Say they've fallen off their bike, or I don't know, maybe something else has happened that's upsetting, and they're not directing that anger out anywhere, right? They're just kind of sad or crying or upset about something. That's when parents should lean in. But when that turns into a temper tantrum and the child's behavior starts to be more other directive, that could be arguing with their parents or being disrespectful, or just no longer in a frame of mind where they can listen to their parents' advice or support. That's the time for parents to lean out. And leading out is what I call disengagement. That's when you don't interact with a kid who's throwing a temper tantrum. Basically what you say to them is, I can't have a conversation with you when you're yelling at me. And you turn your back and walk away. You don't go very far. Right, you're generally in the same room, or maybe at most the room that is adjacent. You're still there for them if something happens, obviously, and you keep an eye on their safety. But I think when kids are tantruming, to try to interact with them, to soothe them, or to talk them off the ledge, that actually makes the tantrum worse and it prolongs it. And there's tons of science to back this up. I'm not the only one who says it. So that's when you lean out. That's the most effective thing you can do.
Makes a lot of sense when you kind of differentiate those two situations. You can see how they do diverge. Okay, what about using questions instead of commands to kind of get what you're really looking for out of your kids?
Well, commands don't work well with a lot of kids. So it kind of does with younger kids. So with a 5-year-old, you can say, it's time to go down to your room, put on your pajamas and get ready for bed. And younger kids, they do very well with that, right? They're kind of okay with being told directly what to do. But as kids start to get older, particularly once they hit their teenage years, they're very sensitive to that. So what works a lot better with teenagers rather than a direct order is to say something like, hey, sometime within the next hour, I'd love it if you could empty that dishwasher. Thanks for taking care of that for me. So it's not an order. It sounds like an ask, but it's still really, you're telling them to empty the dishwasher. You're just changing the language around a little bit. So that works a lot better with older kids, because all of us are sensitive to being told what to do, right? If I am at home with my wife and she happens to go to the kitchen, I don't say, bring me a glass of water. I say, if you don't mind when you come back, and it's convenient, could you bring me a glass of water? So she's going to be much more receptive to that. And older kids are exactly the same way.
For sure. If you kind of think about them as growing into young adults, right? That's the way they'd prefer to be spoken to probably a lot of the times. What about things like consequences and discipline? That's probably the toughest part that a lot of people find with a gentle parenting approach. Are there ways that we can use some different form of punishment to be more effective?
Yeah, you know, there's kind of this myth that's out there. I hear people say this all the time, that consequences don't work with oppositional, strong-willed kids. And that is 100% not true. It's just, it depends on what the consequence is. And what I've learned over the years is there's some consequences that totally backfire. They are not at all effective, and actually they can worsen the problem. But all throughout my book, I talk about the importance of using consequences with kids, but the right ones. And the ones that I include in my book are the ones that actually work, because I've been doing this now for so long with kids and their parents. Everything that I describe in the book are tried and true interventions. I call them battle tested because they've been used so many times and they work. So use consequences that are effective, but don't use the ones that aren't. It's important to know the difference.
Yeah, we still love our kids and we want to set them up for success, and it's tough sometimes. So, hey, I really appreciate talking with you. Thanks for the advice.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, Dr. Sunseri's book, again, is Gentle Parenting Reimagined. We'll have more information on our website at katu.com.